Welcome to the Trailblazers. I'm your host, Perry Rarick. The purpose of the Trailblazers is to share with you interesting and thought-provoking discussions I have with trailblazing business leaders. They're innovative, they're experts at what they do, and they're not afraid to challenge the status quo when it makes sense and the outcomes are meaningful. My Trailblazer guest today is Susan Lynch-Smith. She is the head of business development for Douglas CDMO. They are a contract development and manufacturing organization in the life sciences space, and more specifically, in the drug therapy space. And she's going to tell us more about Douglas and what they do. Susan has been involved in life sciences B2B business development for more than 30 years. You may recognize her as Synergizer Sue. And when you're in business development and you have your own personal brand, you're a big deal, and Susan is. That's why she's here today. Her career began as a chemist building strong analytical and formulation foundation in chromatography, chemical analysis, HPLC, and analytical method development. And she'll tell you that that technical grounding, that foundation remains a differentiator today as she translates complex CMC challenges, formulation risk, and regulatory requirements into clear, compelling commercial strategies for drug innovators. She is really good at what she does. Susan has served in a variety of leadership roles in a number of companies that you're going to recognize. STA Pharmaceutical, that's a Wuxi Aptech subsidiary. Psi Life Sciences, Bushu Pharmaceuticals, and Syngoda Solutions. Sue, welcome to the Trailblazers.
Thank you. I am very honored to be here, and I very much appreciate the great introduction. So thank you, Perry.
Well, thank you for being here. Very exciting stuff. I've been looking forward to this interview for some time. We're going to be talking about some really complex things. If you go into business development in this space, where drug innovators are outsourcing to contract development and manufacturing organizations, you got to love what you do. You can't just jump into it and master it in a heartbeat. And we're going to tap into your sage-like advice and get it all out for younger people who are in this. And it doesn't matter how much experience they're going to have. You and I talked about this in advance, and this is going to be a really interesting discussion. Before we get started, I wanted to have you tell us a little bit more about Douglas CDMO. What does Douglas do? Where are you located? Um, and where do you fit in this complex drug development process?
Douglas CDMO is a boutique, globally integrated contract drug development and manufacturing organization located in beautiful Auckland, New Zealand, as you can see with the screen behind me. The beauty about Douglas is that their expertise lies in high potency, soft gels, and hard to formulate liquids. Their campus is all under one roof. We have about 700 people that are literally tenured between 15 to plus years. And that is something you don't see in CDMOs anymore. Also, they're able to support regulatory, incoming, QA, QC, analytical, manufacturing, packaging, and distribution. And in terms of supply chain, they're able to not only deliver to the North America, Europe, but in 45 other countries, which is really quite impressive for a company that size. And I did emphasize that they are boutique. Douglas CDMO is not looking to be a mega CDMO. We try to keep things extremely personal and form deep partnerships with our clients.
So I want to get into this this space that you operate in as a business development professional in this really complex world that you just described, in which you kind of summarized all the services, maybe not all, but the main ones that you offer. How would you describe that? What's the relationship between a solution provider like Douglas and a drug innovator, specifically the kinds that you're working with? And I think you've used in the past the fragility of this process that they're trying to get through.
Yes, first off, in looking at the landscape, both business development and pharma, as well as the sponsor, especially post COVID, has faced a lot of issues. And it's not only sided to one party or the other, because we are in this space together. And that is quite critical. And in looking since post COVID, funding has been absolutely volatile. Most innovator companies are looking for funding from Series A, Series B, which has been in steep decline. And the end of 2025 in the fourth quarter, it looks like it's finally stabilizing. And we'll know more about what that looks like by the end of this first quarter. Also, you have investor scrutiny. They're looking at burn rates, and they're also being highly specific in targeting assets that will yield a greater probability of success. So that limits the amount of new molecules and innovation coming out for your smaller, mid-sized companies. Then you also always face regulatory challenges, but that will never go away, and nor should it, because it keeps us safe.
Yeah.
But you also have supply chain instability. And last year in 2025 was marked with a lot of uncertainty, and especially with tariffs, which again affects funding and, motivation, and it's chaotic for both parties. And so on the sponsor side, what happens is they become much more cautious. And this has geared them to being much more selective in choosing their vendor. They're also bringing in a greater amount of stakeholders in the making process. Pre-COVID, I dealt with 1 or 2 people when I would be bringing on a company. Today, I deal with, 5 people. So they want sound decision making. And each of those groups, it's like vice president of supply chain, CMC, regulatory, quality, manufacturing. Each of those stakeholders has a different need and something, so it makes it that much more complex. Sponsors are also, wanting more accountability, adaptability, and speed. And with AI coming in, it's not necessarily, the use of AI, but the most efficient CDMOs are going to be the ones who are the strongest and remain in the game. So you got to think about, what does this do to the business development professional out there trying to build business? Well, they need to realize that their sales cycle has now gotten longer. Pre COVID, my sales cycle, I could close something in 3 months for an early development. Um, you could go from 3 months to 12 months. Now we're going 12 to 24 months. Huge difference. So they're taking their time. Also, risk tolerance for sponsors. The business development person needs to be aware, what risks are they most concerned about. And, we always say we know our buyer, but in this time and with things changing, knowing the buyer is more critical than ever.
Yeah, that is a daunting list of challenges. I lost count as you were working through those. I want you to talk a little bit more about that last part, knowing the buyer. So critical. Uh, as you were going through that list of challenges, I'm thinking trust has got to, like transparency and trust has got to be like from the first conversation you have. What do you do to really understand the challenges or what the buyers are up against to be able to build that trust immediately?
It is not easy, and I can say that outright. When I started with Douglas and even pre-COVID, I mean, it was, you sent out mass emails, very generic in style, just to get attention and whoever you can grab. There's been a mega shift in, the way you approach your prospect or buyer. We have moved, in looking at 2025, it hit me that, well, the sales cycle is longer, going back to there. So, what changes do I need to make? It's no longer casting a wide net, seeing what you get. But instead, we have now moved to account based marketing, of which I never even heard of. I'm not a marketer. Um, so with ABM for short, it's very precise driven, not volume driven. And what I love about it and really fell in love with is that even though it's meticulous, it's tedious, it's time consuming, the beauty, it fits so well for Douglas CDMO. If you recall, I mentioned we are a boutique style CDMO. We're not looking for volume. So this fits perfectly with our strategy. With account based marketing, you start out with ideal client profile, where you look externally at the buyer and then you coincide that with internal fit at what your core competency. So in the case of Douglas CDMO, high potent soft gels, hard to formulate liquids, we look at companies that have that pipeline and formulation complexity. With ABM, you also have to be very consistent every time in your messaging. So you have to tailor each message to that particular buyer. So the beauty that I love about it is even though I, get frustrated with the amount of extra work it has caused, on the back end, I do know my buyer. I understand what, gets them nervous, and literally I can align that solution. And when you do that, you're a win. And we tailor every message the same, and it's tailored to each particular company. And we also do LinkedIn the same, advertising the same. And so, yes, it takes longer. Sales are not going to be immediate, but the environment we're in, we already know that. So, why not make and build credibility and trust before actually getting down to business? And when you prove that, you win and the return is going to pay off. But you got to be patient. It's not going to happen in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I love your description of ABM, account-based marketing. When you ask a marketer, that description is always filled with a lot of jargon that doesn't make any sense. I love your practical explanation of how it works for you, and you're on the forefront of trying to engage those buyers. So really, great explanation. I love how you describe that. You shared with me in the past, you have a pretty well tested process to determine a real opportunity in this world that, very complex, full of challenges, and to assess and discern real opportunities out there and know what to focus on. Can you share some of that with us?
Yes, and it goes back to your ideal client profile. So you're focused on pipeline health. And I think that's important because, again, Douglas CDMO is not looking for volume. We're looking for true partnerships in which both of us win. because when our buyer wins, we win. So I look at how healthy their pipeline is. How well does that fit with Douglas's core strengths, which is soft gels and liquids? Very niche orientated. I also look at culture. A lot of people leave out culture. So I'm almost like a matchmaker. I'm bringing two different cultures together. And if it's not a fit, I don't push to move that forward. It's got to be beneficial for both parties. And this fits in alignment with my synergizer soup because I love synergy. I live for that. And when both parties are happy and trust one another, you win. Also, the benefit, and I will say of Douglas CDMO, is that we're a day ahead of everyone in the US. We're actually the first ones to start the business day, and that's usually on my Sunday. That is quite a benefit because if there's an issue, then we already have a solution when you wake up. And that's another added benefit. But I look again, it's culture, it's pipeline, also financial health. If you have no money, it benefits no one. So we do look at that. And I also do a lot of reading. And in this business, for the young business development folks, if you are not keeping up with what's going on, you are not going to get anywhere. I start my day, I'm up early. I read endpoints, outsource pharma, contract pharma, biodive. I mean, I look to see what is changing and how I could get ahead of that change.
Uh, the business day starts in Auckland, New Zealand. I love that. The global business day begins in New Zealand. And I will tell you, I've talked to a lot of folks at Douglas. I've hosted events in which Douglas presents,
Yes.
and that is a consistency. When you were talking about consistency of messaging when you're involved in ABM, and that has been consistent in all your messaging. So it really comes through loud and clear. It's
I
quite a
am
benefit.
I am so happy you brought that up because one of the distinctions, and I have worked with many CDMOs. What I love most about Douglas, it's not just BD and marketing, but it's literally the entire CDMO team. Everyone knows the message, they know who we're targeting, what we're doing. And to me, when the project manager can understand the client that they're serving, you're going to get literally the best service ever. And that's what I love about my team, literally.
I'd like you to talk a little bit more about how that works at the tactical operational level, for lack of another term. But you've mentioned synergy between you and your customers, but you also have great synergy that keeps coming up every time we talk. Synergy between BD and marketing. What makes that work like that? That's not easy to pull off. And you can talk about consistency of messaging, but executing that is difficult, it's a challenge. How do you do that?
First off, I love my marketing, and I will say I would be absolutely nothing without it. I look at marketing truly as a unity of effort, or better, I can say like two heads, one body. We are one engine. Literally, we bounce ideas off one another, we support one another, we relay the same message, we are in the same market position. Every targeted ABM account is concise and shared on both sides and throughout the Douglas team. And we share the same KPIs as well as the same performance expectation. And so, if your message is not precise, clear, and consistent, you're literally going to get a lot of noise. And those who deliver precise and consistent and believe it and know it, those are the ones where your buyer will go, aha. Because, again, and it goes back to the buyer. You serve the buyer. And literally, the buyer is in a very risk heavy environment. And so, if we can relay with every touch point, we know, we understand, then, our credibility compounds.
For those of you who are listening to this, one thing you're probably recognizing that's coming through is empathy. The empathy that Sue has for her buyers. It talks about risks, challenges. What are they nervous about? So important. And I hope you're all listening to that. That's what right looks like. That's why Sue is so successful at that. Thank you for being that person. I know yeah, it's real. I wanna go back to something you said. 2025 was a challenging year. It was, there's a lot of uncertainty and nervousness across multiple markets, certainly in this one. But you told me, not long ago that you're feeling pretty optimistic about 2026. And it's beyond just the hopefulness of of sales, but you think it's real. Why are you hopeful about, 2026?
Well, first, I will say hope is not a strategy. And I'm a firm believer in there. So I am more optimistic, mildly optimistic, with 2026. And the reason for that is when I look at the fourth quarter of 2025, there is stabilization in funding. Um, Also, the sponsor and companies here in North America and worldwide eventually, after all of the turbulence in 2025, realize that execution on their part is strategy. Without innovation, you have nothing. And so, with the funding starting to trickle, because it starts at the top, we see a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on, which kind of leads to I actually did a study on there with mergers and acquisitions, which bodes less for the CDMO. Um, but it trickles down and it is starting to trickle. So that gives me confidence that, 2026 will be less of a challenge than 2025 was. And again, if you're working your process, I have been doing business development for 25 years plus. I have worked through recessions, 9/11, the Great Recession. And when you are working your process consistently and not getting bogged down by the heavy load of external factors you can't control, you'll do well in any environment.
Excellent, excellent advice. Thank you for that. I really believe, that as well. I think that's such a smart way to do things. You know, if you focus on things that are outside of your control, you'll go mad.
Oh, you won't get out of bed. So, brush yourself off. And, business development is the hardest job or hardest role I have ever faced. You do have so much complexity, um, both humanness and, just challenges to overcome. But a lot of times, the overcoming is overcoming yourself and keeping yourself motivated, keeping your eye on the target, and remaining optimistic because the good times don't last forever and the bad times don't last forever. And that's what
Yeah.
keeps me in the game.
Well said, well said. For somebody who's been there and done that. Thank you for that. Before we wrap up, I've got 3 questions. I wanna circle back around. These come from things you've shared with me that I think would be really valuable, for our audience to hear about. One is you've lived by 5, like, you have a creed, like these are big outcomes that you always seek or tenets that you live by, and there are 5 of them. Would you mind sharing those?
Yes, and the 5 I did share with you, I have different goals for different roles. So in my career life, are the 5 I did share with you. And that goes back to Synergizer Sue. I have a mission, and my mission is I bring individual companies together so each may increase their own advantage. When I came up with that and it was solidified, with every mission, you need to have values that you will live by, and it is your creed. And so mine, as a professional business development person, is first, as an employee of Douglas CDMO, I am here to make Douglas a profit, because when they profit, we all profit. Customer service is my bread and butter. I will always strive to be number one. Third, teamwork is essential to success. When the team looks good, the company looks great. Fourth, technology and innovation increase the bottom line. I will always seek it out and support it. And the most important to me, and this is critical, 5, always have fun and enjoy the journey.
Nice. Great advice. Good takeaways. Uh, you told me one time, this stopped me, and I said, "Wait, wait, pause. I need to know more about this, and I'd like you to talk about this." The hardest thing to measure, of course, we all wanna measure results. If we're on our game, we wanna measure the results of the activities. The hardest thing to measure are human expectations. Why? And what can we do about it?
Ugh. I don't think we'll ever be able to measure truly human expectation, and that has always befuddled me in my career in BD. First off, when you think about expectations, they're never explicitly stated. It's like when you go to a doctor and the doctor is asking you questions and you give tidbits of information, but you don't tell them all your bad habits. You're just looking to get the process started. Same thing with the buyer. Also, expectations change due to pressure. So that's a shift. Expectations also are influenced by internal politics, and now that we also have more stakeholders in the game, each of those stakeholders in the decision making process have their own set of expectations. So in this business, we measure, profitability, margin, sales conversion rates, pipeline health. But truly, you can never really measure fear on the buyer side, board pressure, investor scrutiny, and also the personal career risk that those people that have made the decision to work with you. And those particular things are the ones that drive the decision, not the spreadsheets. And
Yeah.
so, again, when you realize that and you truly put yourself in the shoes of your buyer, and you are aware of what is frightening to them and what can derail them, you will have the best buyer.
Yeah. So sage. That is
Well, I
great
am
sage
getting
like
older.
there's yeah. There are, it keeps coming back to that empathy for the buyer and really, these may not be measurable, but you can certainly project that you're interested in those things that may be unspoken, still part of the backdrop, but you can communicate an interest in that to build that trust or sustain the trust that you've established.
It is, and it's again, it goes back to your process and constantly, putting your focus on what's happening with that particular company or buyer.
Yeah. Something that not everybody probably knows about, you invest in the next generation.
Yes.
By serving as an adjunct professor at East Carolina University. And can you tell us a little bit about, what are you involved in there? But also, like, what are the things that you always find yourself offering in terms of advice to these students?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. I just had 21 years of teaching, or as I rather say, I don't teach anything, I facilitate. So my students are undergrad seniors, and my class is strategic management. So the role is to give them insight into the business world, both internationally, domestically. Um, my personal goal in teaching strategic management is to get them to be business thinkers, not business thinkers. And
And
yes,
what is that? So what does that mean?
that means, again, you are, you're not just winging it. You have to work hard, and that is something I tell them all the time. Over decades of living, life is not getting any easier, it's getting harder. And I do warn them, most students think getting started in their career is the hardest part, and it isn't. The hardest part is staying relevant over time. And you do that by constantly ensuring that you're not in your comfort zone, that you're constantly pursuing, reading, learning, and stretching. And that is the only way you're going to win, whether AI is here or not. But you got to be prepared to think and to execute. And you have to constantly, again, push yourself out of the comfort zone. Otherwise, you go extinct. Too many folks, and I've seen this over the course of my career, become prisoners of their own making. Oh, I have 2 more years till retirement. Retirement to me is a stupid word. If I love doing something and it drives my passion, gets me up in the morning, that is magic. And I especially learned that during COVID shutdown, of which I even came up with my own disease, HDS, which was human deprivation syndrome. We need each other. And if you're good and you love what you do, there is no retiring.
Awesome, awesome. We'll leave on that note. Awesome, awesome advice. I agree with you. I think we're cut from that same mold, perhaps. How can our audience get a hold of you, Sue?
Just go to LinkedIn, type in Synergizer Sue. It will lead you right there. You could also reach out on the Douglas CDMO website, and we look forward to connecting.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful stuff. My guest today has been Susan Lynch-Smith. She is Synergizer Sue, and she's the head of business development for Douglas CDMO. They're a contract development and manufacturing organization in the life sciences and drug therapy space. Sue, thank you very much for being a trailblazer and sharing your time with the Trailblazers.
Well, I love it, and I say thank you immensely. It's a pleasure and an honor.